So the first is just about who you are, what you do, and kind of your background into what you do.
My mic was muted for the entire thing. Yeah, cool. So once again, the whole goal of the panel is just try to talk about topics in our industry and kind of highlight the work that's being done. So that out of the way. Hi, my name is Cora Kennedy. I'm the director of esports at Illinois Wesleyan. I also serve as a DEI chair for the NECC, director for the IHSCA, and esports mom for many. I identify as trans and lesbian. Harley?
Oh, that's me. Hi, my name is Jacob Adler. I go by Harley. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the director of esports at Marywood University. I was also previously a game manager with the NECC, and I've done various other odds and end jobs for esports, be it graphic design, streaming, casting, just whatever I could get my hands on.
Awesome, awesome. Riley?
Yeah, my name's Riley Matties. A lot of people know me as Jirachi. I am a teamfight tactics caster, and that's kind of all I do. I identify as trans femme non-binary. My pronouns are they, she.
So my name is Lyndsay Bamberger. I'm in the marketing and media space for esports. I am a demi-femme. There's a lot of labels because everybody's a spectrum. But I am a demi-femme, pan-romantic demisexual. And my pronouns are she, they.
Awesome, awesome. And once my mic should be working now, fantastic, I think.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. We're doing it live, it's fine.
Okay, so the next part we get into is just kind of how you got into esports, the history of it, and kind of how your journey has been within esports.
So what's funny for me is working in collegiate. Harley, I'm pretty sure your path to collegiate is different than mine, because mine comes from the high school space. I ran a high school program for 3 years, and I started that program my second day teaching. I literally just asked my principal, "Hey, can I do video games?" And he went, "I don't know, sure." And then here I am, and now I'm here 4 years later. And so I cut my teeth on the high school space and that whole sort of deal. So my whole initiative and things that I've done comes from the high school space and getting involved in esports as a coach. I've only competed briefly in Siege because I was crazy. But besides that, I've mostly stayed to the coaching and administrative side.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you touched on it perfectly. Our paths are very different. Initially, I was just kind of thrown into it. I was, a very strong viewer for a number of years. I got started in CS:GO back in, gosh, it was like 2015. I went to ESL 1 2016. I was like, wait, this is like an actual job that people can do. So I got 5 of my friends together. We started making like a little casual team. We never made it out of silver, unfortunately. But then once I hit college, I got involved with my esports club on campus. I became the president and started making teams. Once I graduated, then I started working with the NECC, and I also volunteered at a local private school running an after-school program for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and that was, I think, about 6 months ago. So very, very short duration in high school esports, but kind of similar in a little bit of a way, but very different overall.
Yeah, mine is very different because I got into esports in like 2014 playing League. Never made it out of plat. I know. I know, but never made it out of plat there, and then TFT came out and I swapped over to that, and then just got better and better and eventually hit the point of competing more or less at a professional level there. And then once because I started grad school last August, I knew I didn't have time to like grind out and compete anymore. So I swapped over to casting because I'd done a couple gigs at that point and really have not looked back since then. And we've been going at that for about 6 months. So mine very much has been the hit pro level and then retire, except retiring after like 6 months, but is what it is.
Do you feel ancient yet?
There's so many like 18-year-olds competing in TFT, and I'm 24, so yeah, I feel kind of fucking ancient.
Yeah.
So I actually got into the esports space. Like some say like, oh, this is how everybody does it, but also not really. So I had a spinal surgery and I lost the feeling in my feet and I couldn't walk for almost 4 years. And so during that time, I was really lonely. And so I became a full-on nerd and I gamed a ton and I started like doing graphics and doing overlays and all that fun stuff and started streaming. And then because of streaming, that's kind of how I started building community and getting into it. And I've always been in marketing. So it was a really rough time of my life and esports really pulled me out of it. And I've been I work with collegiate, amateur, and pro levels of people with the org I'm with.
That is wonderful. I think it's nice to see how many different backgrounds people have, but we're all essentially in the same space, kind of.
It's also funny to see all you guys selling yourself short, by the way. I can tell you're all being a bit modest.
Yeah.
Don't have to be. You're my friends.
You want me to drop that I won 2 TFT tournaments?
Yes.
Yes.
That's really cool. Yeah, actually.
Okay, let's drop that. I won 2 TFT tournaments and got 9th at Set 4 regionals. That's my flex.
Let's go.
There we go.
That's awesome. I mean, if we're flexing, I guess the first esports team at SUNY Oneonta, my alma mater, the Rocket League team, just absolutely rolled the first ever SUNY League and the second one, and I think the third one. So we have a very, very long-standing winning streak.
Nice. If we're flexing, I'm friends with Cora, so there we go.
Come on.
That's a big one. That's a big flex.
Actually, I have flexed.
That really is.
Oh, man.
I have my first trophy. This is my first trophy for my high school team. We won this going to a godforsaken tournament downstate Illinois.
Wow.
It was the same day as the Overwatch state finals, so my team had to drive themselves because I was up north. And then they brought a trophy back home for me.
That's amazing. Oh,
Nice.
if I was downstairs, I'd also grab my trophy and just hold it. my gamers. I got the top community activation, which was a huge honor this past year from the Gamers.
That's
and
awesome.
That was dope.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Open with that next time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. I just have a hammer. I mean, this is we played
Hey,
against
that's a dope hammer.
Lackawanna College, and they made a hammer for the trophy, and we actually wound up winning.
Lyndsay,
So, I mean,
Overwatch?
yeah, this is Reinhardt's hammer.
Reinhardt,
It is
yeah.
Overwatch, yeah.
Lyndsay,
So,
do I have to flex
we-
my prop guns?
You mean your Vandal that I kept saying Phantom?
Harley, you played CS, right?
Yes, never made it out of silver, but I think it's the game that I have like the second most hours in after I got addicted to League of Legends.
Check this out.
Oh, you have the Asimov! Oh, that's so cool. That's one of my favorite skin lines by far.
For
It's
reference,
so-
this is
so
airsoft.
good.
This is not real. This is airsoft.
Yep.
But I have this.
Very, very cool.
I made it. It's
Oh my
horribly
gosh.
botched.
Let's go.
And I also have this. That's the Phantom from Valorant.
That's the Phantom from
Oh,
Valorant.
that's so
yeah.
cool!
So Cora was on my podcast, and like the entire time I cringed listening to that because I kept saying Vandal, and the entire time Cora was like, "Politely, you're wrong. It's the Phantom."
Just be
Respectfully incorrect.
Yeah.
better. Okay, so that was
sorry, we got so off track there.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry,
100%.
Corey.
Hey, it's what it's for though. Okay.
It is what it's for. So the next one is just kind of about your relationship to the Pride initiatives, or if you want to talk about like a coming out story, just that sort of topic.
So when I tell other trans folks my coming out story, I get yelled at for going too fast.
Too fast.
So
No such thing, honestly.
no, just you wait.
Yeah.
Just you wait. So
Still.
my best friend Emmy was here earlier. She came out to me as trans like last March or something. And I took a huge interest in that kind of stuff and started like doing a lot of research on my own and that kind of thing. And I figured out I was trans in September, came out entirely publicly in October, and started hormones in November.
Wow.
So
It's very cool.
I had this like huge thing, and what's funny is right before I left teaching, because I taught previously, I had my students I let them ask me just questions you wouldn't normally ask a teacher, because I was leaving. What are they gonna do? Fire me? And what I ended up asking is this: one of my students who was bi asked me, "What's your orientation?" And at the time, I said straight, and she then yelled at me because she tried to argue with me that I'm either pan or ace. And when I went back to do a guest talk there a couple months back, I mentioned I was lesbian, and she like went, "Ha! I told you you're gay," and I didn't know how to take that. But I always was this kind of like huge ally and supporter, and now it makes sense. So I've been an ally for a lot of students. I am what people call esports mom because I have a lot of kids who come see me for just being a supportive person for them, and now I'm also trans myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did the exact opposite, and I'm still very much, questioning my gender. So just take this with a grain of salt. But essentially, what happened was, I think the first time that I ever that something ever clicked for me, and this, of course, I realized it maybe a year ago. Once I finally came out as non-binary, I came out mid-pandemic, so probably year and a half, 2 years at this point. It clicked for me that there was a manga series that I was reading when I was younger called Ranma 1-2, and it's about I don't know if any of you are familiar. It's about a boy who falls into a cursed spring, like a hot spring, and then every time he gets touched with cold water, he turns into a woman, and then every time he gets soaked in hot water, he turns back into a guy. And I looked at it and I was like, huh, that would be a cool ability to have. And then I proceeded to not unpack any of that until 9 years later. And I mean, my life has been a series of situations like that where I'm like, here's this weird feeling that I'm having, or I wonder what it would be like to, be a different gender, and then I proceed to not unpack that. So I think pandemic really is when I was able to sit down and be like, I don't think you're cis. And then from there, I kind of have gone through the whole process of kind of figuring out my identity and going through with that and choosing my name Harley. I actually have a very funny story about that. I don't want to get totally off track, but I have a very funny story about my chosen name Harley.
Say it. Go ahead.
So the story goes, is I'm assigned male at birth, and my father's name is David. I was supposed to be named Harley because I would have been Harley, David's son. And
Okay, that's amazing. I love that so much.
And then 20 years later, I was like, you know what? The name Harley is kind of really cool, and so I've just been going with that.
That's perfect. That's awesome.
It's perfect.
Not
It
to
works.
randomly segue, but my friend is named Lexus because her dad always wanted Alexis and knew once he had a daughter that he was never going to be able to afford it. So,
That's really interesting, actually. That's really unique.
Similar. That's very similar. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. My coming out journey has been wild because I came out as non-binary when I was 19, so 6 years ago now. And because one of my friends at music school came out, and that was the catalyst of oh, wait, what's this non-binary thing? Oh, a lot of things make sense now. So I came out then, but hadn't really took a while to figure things out, and it took me 5.5 years to realize, oh yeah, I'm just full on trans femme. Not even just non-binary, non-binary trans femme. It's a matter of time before I start hormones. So finally did that, was it almost 6 months ago?
Yay.
Actually, I think my Hrt Anniversary is in 2 days, or 6-month anniversary is in 2 days. So we're getting there, but it took me a lot of time to just figure myself out, even within knowing, hey, I'm non-binary and trans, and that's about all I know. And even before that, I knew I was queer about 11 years ago, my freshman year of high school. I also did the thing where I knew I was queer and thought I was a cis guy that was mostly into women, and I was like, but I think I'm queer, so I guess I also like men. It turns out I didn't, and I've just been a lesbian the whole time. So everything has been I know I'm queer, I know I'm trans. I'm still kind of figuring things out, but we've come a lot further with figuring things out within the framework.
speaking of orientation, actually, the other day we had a conversation in the Discord for the stream where I was talking about, hey, I was trying to guess like everyone's orientation. I had a couple I didn't know, and I guessed Harley was ace, and now they're questioning themselves again.
So I identify as bisexual, but one of my friends has been questioning their identity, and they're thinking about maybe coming out as pansexual. And then when you said ace, I was like, I like had to look back and be like, how am I attracted to people? And like take a note of that and like really kind of collect my thoughts on that. So it's a process. It's a whole process. But I think it can generally be summed up as I like people. People are nice.
I'm
So
happy I can help.
thank you.
Lyndsay?
So I think like everybody here, I'm still very much figuring out like who I am and where I lay upon a spectrum. I think everyone's really attached to having like labels in our society and like what we identify as. And I think it really fluctuates for me. So there's days where I very much identify femme, and there's days where I very much don't identify femme. And so that falls under a lot of people say it's demi girl. I've never liked the term girl for adult females, so I call it demi femme. But my coming out was a little weird because I have a lot of like very Catholic family, and so like for the longest time, like just talking about my sexuality and not even my orientation, I like hid that I was attracted to women. And I remember one time I got grounded because my mom walked in and I was making out with my girlfriend, and she grounded me for smoking weed, which we weren't doing. And, you know, so it was one of those things where it was like everyone was so in denial that we were, you know, it was just odd. So, and now my mom accepts me completely, but still it was like, you know, everyone has that weirdness kind of growing up when you're explaining that to your parents. And so, so anyway, I actually fully identified as gender fluid, and demi-femme about the time that I got engaged, because I had this like identity crisis of like, I feel like I should know the full me and you should know the full me. And I like went into this whole like breakdown, and like it was ridiculous. I was a whole mess. But yeah, so I came out, and very surprisingly, like I was found a ton of support instead of like when I originally, you know, was younger. But yeah, I really did think, another fun story, I really did think I was lesbian for the longest time of my life. And then weirdly, I met my fiance and I was like, that dude looks pretty nice. And then, you know, now we're engaged. So,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, so that also made me question things, and, you know, so yeah, lots of stuff. All I've really learned is that everyone's a spectrum, and you don't necessarily need to have a label unless you want one.
I actually totally forgot one important thing that I want to touch on is that I actually came out as gender fluid in high school to one person, and then I got so anxious and worried about it because I was in Boy Scouts at the time that I was like, I'm just gonna repress this part of my identity, and I didn't acknowledge it again. So I kind of skipped over that part,
Yay.
but like it's that whole, you know, the whole I can't really do this right now. So
Yeah, I understand that.
yeah.
And actually, there's a question from chat that I do want to touch on as well. We're going to go a little bit off topic. And this is actually a question on labels, because I've been thinking about labels a lot, and labels in background. And like, do you think that we look to labels to figure out how to connect to others? Because a lot of times you find community through finding someone who's labeled similarly to you.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. I would say, like, yeah, I've found community through those who are labeled similar to me, just because it's, you have to explain less. That's how I view it. You have to explain less. There's more implied in the understanding, implied knowledge. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I think so. Absolutely. I mean, that's, you know, I'm super femme cis presenting, and so when I'm going through months and times in my life when I don't identify that way, it feels very lost, and finding other people who are like non-binary or gender fluid to like talk to about that, that's a great way to connect. And I think that a lot of people on the LGBTQIA spectrum also understand that, like, I don't know, like it helps us connect. But I feel like once you meet someone that like knows any of those labels, you don't need to worry about them, if that makes sense. Like I feel like anyone in that spectrum will accept you, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of my friends, I think a lot of my friends growing up have been, LGBTQIA plus positive generally, or they've been members of the community themselves. So I actually made a joke one time that there's always one straight friend in the friend group, and then I told my mother that, and she started laughing because back in her day there's always one gay friend in the friend group, and that was back in the 70s ish. And also big shout out to my mom. She's actually the one in chat who asked the question. So hi mom. Look, mom, I'm on TV.
That's so cute.
That's so cute. Riley, do you have anything to follow up?
Yeah, I think that's honestly part of why I like using the term lesbian, because like my sexuality it's not that much more complicated. I'm still very much figuring out, but having the label lesbian not only to like help me identify with like this the lesbian community, at least in Philly where I live, but also as a way of like helping me figure out stuff, because like I know it's like a little more complicated, but having like that label to work off of has helped me out quite a bit. So is lesbian 100% accurate? No, but it helps me at least in at least a couple ways.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's also why it's like I really respect labels and I love labels, but at the same time, I've had the biggest label battle for a big part of my life. And so I completely get what you're saying, Riley. Like, it's like, this is like pretty much what I fit into. But again, like, everyone is such a wild spectrum of unique combinations that it's like, it's hard to really just stamp that. But a lot of times we do use those stamps because it's easier to just say, yeah, this is what I am, and then you don't have to sit there and explain yourself for 20 minutes, you
Now,
know?
the challenge as well is sometimes people see those labels and think they have to rigidly adhere to them. A
Mhm.
lot of younger folks in the LGBTQ community think that that label is the end all be all, and I must stick to this now because it's what I identify as. You can
Mhm.
change your mind anytime you damn well feel.
Mhm. I mean, like I thought I was seriously lesbian for forever and ever and ever, and then I met Chris, you know. So, and that's another thing too. I think that a lot of people feel less valid in their label or in their sexuality if like I now identify as pan, but I am in a heterosexual presenting relationship. And so I know I struggle with that. And a lot of people struggle with like, am I really what I say I am? You know?
Mhm.
And like you can date someone of the opposite sex and still be who you are. It doesn't change who you're attracted to or who you love or you know what I mean? Like society doesn't get
Yeah.
to tell you that.
There's an adage that really helped me realize who I should be, coming out as non-binary, and that is, so especially with the non-binary community, everyone has this kind of amorphous view of every non-binary person and what they should look like. Like they need to be perfectly androgynous, and like you can't tell their actual gender because they are non-binary, they're outside of the binary. So that's like kind of the perception that a lot of people fall into as not like a stereotype, but it's what you expect from a non-binary person. And when people think that, then I think the response that I've really drawn a lot of comfort from is you don't owe anyone androgyny. Is I identify as who I am, and it makes me feel comfortable, and I don't need to adhere to this overly stretched perception in order to become like the face of this community that ultimately it's a community with so many different people and backgrounds. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel that with as someone who is pretty androgynous at this point, it has helped me to keep in mind like I'm presenting androgynous because I want to, not because I owe it to anyone. And that
that too.
even before I realized I was trans femme, I was like presenting a lot more masculine, and just telling myself like I I can do what I want. I don't owe anyone anything because of this label. This label doesn't really mean anything except what I want it to mean. So that's helped me through the entire journey. Just telling myself, I just do what I want. I feel like that's how it should be for all of us.
Yeah.
I think that's something I personally struggle with a lot, is because there's days, most of my days, I will say, predominantly want to present mask and dress mask. And I have this internal battle of when I dress feminine, like, am I doing this because I actually want to, or because I feel like I should because it's easier? Or so I think like I need to take a page from your book, Riley, because that's something that I question myself all the time, is like, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for everyone to not bother me? You know what
Where's
I
my
mean?
pen? I'm gonna write it down. I need to make a note of this.
I actually had an issue a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago where I had people telling me that like I need to tone down how much I myself because it's annoying others. And so then I got a tattoo, and then I hung a pride flag behind me, and here
That
I
is-
am. And
That's
There
great.
you go. Yeah.
and while the comment did provide me some introspection to how much I am posting out there publicly, I also realized that part of my brand now is just being myself, and is showing a lot of who I am, and my students kind of know that from me as well. It's like I'm very blunt and honest about who I am because I'm pretty bad at hiding it. I'm also awful at lying, and so I just don't bother.
I mean,
That's exactly how I feel over with like being a TFT caster. Like this isn't my setup now because I'm in New York and not my house. But like me being like on Riot broadcasts and my background is 3 pride flags, and I'm like so open about who I am and not hiding anything on the broadcast, not hiding anything in my social media presence. And that my whole presence over there is very much about like being as me and open as I can, because like it's kind of small, but there are trans people. There's a trans community that plays TFT, and I know like having that representation is so important for them. And I've had people DM me on Twitter like, "Hey, I see what you're doing, and it matters so much." And like, thank you. And like that's the whole point. I'm trying to be as visibly me as possible to show other people like me there's someone like you who's doing this and can be at like the highest level and kill it. It was almost the same thing when I was competing, just being I'm the representation, so I'm going to be as much representation as I can.
I literally DM'd Cora. I hope, like, I legitimately DM'd Cora. I was like, hey, you're a really big inspiration. Like, the same exact thing, because you are so outspoken and because you are so unabashedly yourself. So I think if everyone was themselves, then the world would be a much better place, frankly. So
And it's something I make a point to do, like all the panels I was on. I was on this big flurry of panels and interviews from like March and April, and I had made a lot of new friends and met a lot of people through that, because what they do is they DM me after, hey, I saw you on this and this thing, can we talk? I'm like, gladly. Some of the students we're gonna see later on this broadcast are from that, and so that's just what I'm happy with. And actually, I believe Tori, the next question don't remember off the top of my head. The next question ties into this kind of a deal.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, about, when you were younger, is there any support that you wish that you had to kind of help you through your journey that you didn't have?
And so this is where I can't quite answer because I'm on a pretty accelerated timeline here. And from my perspective, a lot of what I did as a teacher was supporting students by being just an accepting adult. A lot of them need just an adult who's supportive of them. And a lot of times my kids would just stop by class like, can I just get a hug? I'm like, sure, gladly. I would love that. And sometimes it's all they need. But I'll let you guys speak more on that because I am not one to speak on this.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say I grew up in like a very kind of not fully conservative, but definitely a lot more traditional viewed town. And I was in Boy Scouts for 10 years, so it was a very, very masculine community. Really, I guess, and this is an issue I think that plagues the LGBT community in general for a lot of reasons, but there's very few older people who we can turn to as we're growing up, as we're learning about this, and say, what was it like for you? And I think, first of all, that's a tragedy that we can't have the same resources as, anyone else for people who are questioning themselves, questioning other parts of themselves, and like, oh, what should I do for a career? What should I do for this? This is who we are. And so the fact that we don't have as many resources for this, first of all, it hurt my coming out story, as I'm sure, you were able to put together for that. But then it also made me realize that we can be this for other people. And so obviously we've got a little bit of ways to go, but as much as we can support the youth and be that older person, I guess, is the goal.
Yeah, no, I feel that with me like figuring out things in high school, like me, I knew I was queer, but and there was like kind of older queer people around me and some queer representation and stuff I was consuming, but there wasn't any trans representation. So until like my senior year, one of the teachers came out as trans, and I was like, oh, okay, there's someone, okay, cool. But then dealing with everyone around me was not like there was a mix of okay, this is whatever, and just straight up transphobia. So that kind of internalized some stuff and set back me figuring out I was trans by a solid couple years, and yeah, just having the lack of like adult support and representation definitely it set things back. It obviously it didn't stop it entirely because we're here and I'm pretty obviously like openly trans now, but yeah, no, that's what I want to be. Not just in TFT, but also like for grad school, I'm doing another music degree, and eventually I want to get that too. I want to be a professor. So, and part of that is I want to be the queer and trans teacher because I mean, yeah, I'm gonna get straight kids that come through, but I'm going to have the trans kid that comes through one day that needs a trans adult in their life, and I know that's gonna be me, and I know I can actually really help them through that and be the support they need. And even besides that, like just whoever needs to come through, and any queer kid, really just any kid in general, like really be there to support them. And even for straight kids, having someone who's queer and trans that kind of like open their eyes up and be a little more accepting of that whole world can definitely help. And also, who knows? You're gonna get kids that think they're cis out when they come in, and then it turns out, oh, nope, never mind. They see me and just no, never. Yeah. So
For a lot of the students that I actually mentor, I'm the only trans adult they know. And so for a lot of them, it's like I get asked a lot of questions. They don't really know where else to go for the answers, or just support them in ways that cishet people really can't. And so it's interesting to look at the idea of how much having an elder, they call them elder gays, but it's really true. How much having an elder around is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Lyndsay?
So like my so my mine wasn't easy. Like so like I said earlier, I was raised in a super super like Catholic Christian upbringing. And like I have a lot of religious trauma because of that. And like I have specific memories of like I was holding hands with my girlfriend at youth group, and like someone else saw it and someone told the rest of the kids, and all of the kids like pretty much bullied me out of going to youth group, which like as a kid that was like the one place that I really enjoyed to be. And like so I stopped going to youth group, and then I was isolated, and then you know and so and again, like my parents were never rude about it, but like again, the one time that I ended up being caught, making out with my girlfriend, I got grounded for smoking weed, even though we definitely weren't smoking weed. Like, mom, you saw, like, so, I didn't have anyone to talk to when I was growing up about, liking girls and liking, being into females. And so I had instead, like, I grew up in a very kind of like you were saying, Harley, a very Christian community, a very old school community. and very quickly word got around that Lyndsay likes girls, and Lyndsay the Les went around for a long time when I was a kid, and like, so I wish that there were the openness available that like I'm seeing now online. Like, first of all, I wish Twitter was a thing when I was a kid, because I feel like I could have tweeted out and been like, "This sucks," and someone would have been like, "I got you, kiddo. Like, don't worry." But like, that's something I'm excited about for the upcoming generations, because I think that they are coming into a much more accepting kind of field, kind of world than we are, and there's still a lot of fight and a lot of struggle, but it's a lot easier to connect with other people that are in the community. And like Cora said earlier, having like being an elder gay
It's a
and
term.
going through that it is and having that is great. And yeah, so it was definitely rough, and I wish there was more resources as a kid. But I proudly love the nickname Lyndsay the Lesbian, Lyndsay the Les now. So, you know, raised through fire, if you will.
Reclaim that, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think Twitter's a double-edged sword, because I'm
Yep.
chronically addicted to Twitter. And when you go on and you see
Same, don't worry, yeah.
all of the, the horrible comments and all of the constant discourse about if it's okay to be a trans person, and all of the current issues regarding just being openly trans, or being yourself, having your own identity, it's terrifying. So it's very much a double-edged sword, but I do think ultimately it can help find like-minded people who get angry about these same things and are passionate about making sure that everyone is just able to be safe and happy in who they are, because that's what it's all about. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Is it time for Cora to talk about the hate mail she gets?
oh God.
So when I announced this stream, I had someone DM me the word rope. I've had someone send me images that I will not share. When I posted my tattoo on Reddit, on the subreddit, I got 2,000 upvotes, and half the comments were death threats. And I am as out and loud and unapologetically myself, because people need to see that I'm still happy. Like, despite all the hate mail, it's random nobodies on the internet. I don't care. 2 follower accounts sending me death threats. Yeah, get better. I don't care. Like, even if they're big people, I don't care. The whole goal of being myself on the internet is showing others that they can also be themselves. And like, half this group here I met through Twitter, literally. Tori found Riley through Twitter. I found Harley messaged me through Twitter. Lyndsay, I unfortunately met you in person back last July.
Unfortunately,
because I had no idea who I was then.
No, it's because we were both at a point in our lives where we were like, "Who are we?"
We're
But
just
we were
straight
also
panicking.
kind of babies to the fresher. Yeah, like that was one of my first in-person events. That wasn't like one of the ones I ran. So
That was literally my first day on the job.
Together. Yeah.
So it's all about representation, and actually a lot of the students I mentor now I've met through just social media, and I've never actually seen them in person. And I'm here for them because they need someone. I'm not here for like some glorified sense of self-righteousness. It's because they needed someone to help, and I can help. And I believe that also ties to the next topic, Tori.
Yes. The next one is about so people are in different aspects of esports. So I guess how welcoming is the current space that you're in, the community that you're in, and how do you think that you can build a more inclusive community, either as a participant, caster, director, just anything that you're involved in?
For me personally, collegiate's been actually really welcoming. The thing is, there's a question that's popped up recently for me, is how welcome has collegiate been because they knew me prior to transition? How welcoming would they have been if I was new and trans? Because I came out after a couple months of being in the space, so I got my feet underneath me, and they also knew me through my high school works. But if I was brand new to the space and trans, how would that have gone over? That's a question that kind of haunts me a lot. Because I'm not entirely certain. Right now I've got a lot of support, a lot of very good people in my life, people who want to help, and I've met all these wonderful and amazing people through collegiate, but I'm not sure if that would have been the same if I was trans coming in. And that's a question that I'm still unsure of. I'm still really unsure of that question. In general, building an inclusive space in my industry, collegiate director, is a lot about leading by example, at least in my case. I have a pride flag hanging on my door to my office in the facility because I'm me. And I want other people to see that too. We're doing our women and non-binary gaming nights. I have literal pride jerseys that I use for donation incentives. I have stickers galore that are all pride colored, and I'm just showing a lot of ways that it's okay to be supportive, and I think people are afraid of that sometimes. Is showing support publicly because of some negative perception, but I'm showing that's okay, and I want to show that's okay as much as I can.
I don't know if you saw, I was writing notes furiously throughout that whole conversation. I was like, okay, like what can I do? Because like I'm very much still relatively new to this position. I only came in I think like 6 months ago, like I said.
Yeah.
So, and I did deal with a little bit of that hesitation coming into the collegiate space because I had I was going through all of this with my personal email through the job application process, etc., through interviews and everything, and I had my pronouns in the bottom of my email, and as I was, going through the process, I like paused for a second, and because I hadn't heard back in a couple days. So obviously, then the anxiety starts kicking in, like, oh my gosh, is this job going to ghost me even though I really wanted it, all that stuff. So I was anxious, and I went to go talk to my mom, and I asked her, what if they turn me down because I have my pronouns in my signature? And it was a little scary, but ultimately, not only did that not matter, it wasn't even a consideration, but then my supervisor, when I came in for the first day on the job, he asked me if like what my preferred name was, and I think coming into a this is Marywood University is a very religious school. It's built on the Catholic intellectual the like the pillars of Catholicism, and looking for the intellectual premise beyond that. And I'm doing a really poor job of explaining it, but it was very much a welcoming environment, and I was apprehensive at first, but ultimately all the people who I've met have been super welcoming, and all my student athletes, they feel comfortable asking me questions and coming up to me and chatting about my experiences, and they all use my correct pronouns, and it's really, really welcoming. So.
And actually, I wanted to ask, how has it been at your institution for you? Because I've actually had, so I came out here after I came was and then came out afterwards. They have known me longer as Cora than my dead name. I'm still called my dead name by several people. My company credit card is still in my dead name. My email is still my dead name.
Yeah.
How has it been for you?
I will say I only just made the switch from, it's not my dead name, but it's my preferred name. So all of my stuff is still labeled as Jacob Adler, which is it's fine. I'm totally fine with that. Same thing with my credit card and all of that. So I haven't really made a full switch yet, simply because I'm still hedging, and this is all of this stuff that I'm dealing with internally. But genuinely, it's been very nice. I think because this institution, and because colleges and institutions in general need to be so open and welcoming to the youth and to new people coming in, and they have a constant influx of new people from new experiences, new walks of lives, looking to try new things, looking to meet new people and gain new experiences. You have to be open and welcoming to everyone at that point. So, and I think personally, that Marywood University does a great job of loving thy neighbor and just generally being a welcome and wholesome environment for everyone. So
Before we go on, Riley, I'm sorry, we just got a $100 donation from Zeusbeard. Thank you so much. We are now at 350 out of 1,000, so awesome. I still have 18 hours left. Let's do it. Riley?
Hey, that's awesome. Zeus Beard, thank you.
I got to do the ultimate bravery, right? Is that the next goal?
That was the goal, so I have to do Ultimate Bravery the next time I play League, which should be maybe next. We'll see.
Ooh,
Riley?
interesting.
Yeah. TFT has been kind of weird. At least like everyone I directly talk to has been like super supportive and is like I've made it known like feel free to ask me questions like pretty much from day one of me showing up. I was competing in this weekly series that Giant Slayer, the company that does all of NATFT basically, um they had this weekly series. I signed up. I I got asked to compete one week, and I was like, wait, I don't think these people know my pronouns. So I DM'd the person, DM'd the main TO for that, was like, hey, my pronouns are they, them. Can you let the casters know? And she let the casters know, and I listened back to the VOD, and they were nailing it instantly. And that actually has started a whole thing, at least over in TFT, where pretty much since the moment I showed up, the casters have been defaulting to they, them for literally everyone.
That's awesome.
So, and I kind of know that switch came about because I showed up, which is cool to see. Like, okay, me showing up made meaningful progress, like for the community, and like everyone I talk to is like, yeah, like what you're doing is awesome. There's another non-binary caster, Casanova, and I have now done how many events with them? I think I've done 3 events with them now. 2 of them like they're my casting duo, and that's like having a non-binary casting duo has been super. It's been so cool and awesome to see. But then you also get Twitch chat, which is Twitch chat. So it that has gotten sketch, but like there's and the first not the first main Riot Circuit event I did, it was bad. Like that was the event that I was casting and Casanova was the host for, and it was my first time on a Riot broadcast, and I think it wasn't Casanova's first Riot broadcast, but I think it was their first Riot TFT broadcast. And which that was bad. And this was also when I was not like it wasn't like a real beef, but the biggest TFT streamer is K3 Soju, and I'd put him kind of low on a power ranking, and he got mad on Twitter, and it started the whole thing with like his chat kind of turning against me. So when you have a 15,000 viewer stream chat all against you, inevitably there's gonna be transphobes, and it got so bad that I think Warren Younger wrote an upcomer article about the transphobia in Twitch chat, and Riot's official TFT Twitter account was like, this is not okay, we're going to step up moderation. But then there's that flip side of, yeah, there's this transphobia, but now it's more and more so, that's bringing out the active support. And now it's hitting the point where like the active support is outweighing the transphobia. The last tournament I casted was on Morthdog, the head TFT dev's Twitch channel. And I was talking to one of his mods because they were like, yeah, Jirachi's on the cast. We gotta watch out. And I asked this mod like, okay, how bad was it? And they were like, there were people, but pretty much every time someone made a shithead comment, it got drowned out by shut up, you're dumb.
That's
so
awesome.
like there's been it's hitting the point there is like an overwhelming amount of support, and I've hit the point where I'm just like, I don't look at Twitch chat at all because what's the point? But also, end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like there's as long as I know the support's there, the transphobia. I care more about the other trans people in the community seeing the support than not seeing the transphobia, because I think we're all aware just like transphobia exists, it's gonna happen. What it matters more for us to see is the active support and the active backlash, because when you see that, you are supported, you are loved, despite the hate is in the world.
I couldn't have said it better. That was really well said. Thank you. Lyndsay?
So I think I kind of have, like, I'm very aware of my privilege that, being someone who identifies as femme, and is gender fluid and, has days where they identify as they, them. And, like I'm very patient, and like if there's a day where I very much like physically don't identify as femme, like I have my hair up, like I'm dressed very mask and stuff, like I'm very patient, and I understand my privilege that I have with being able to just roll with it and be cool with pronouns. So I would say I don't run into um a ton of some of the struggles that you all mentioned because of how I'm presenting. Um, but that being said, I would say that a couple years ago in gaming and esports, if I mentioned um, a girlfriend or being bi or pan or lesbian or any of that, like it's a whole different world than it is now. Um, and I think that like now everyone's like, hell yeah, like nobody thinks about it, you know? And like when I first started streaming, that was something that I did definitely have to hide because it wasn't something that people were really comfortable with yet in 2014, 2015. So, but I would say the actual like marketing and media and content creation and influencer world that I'm in for esports tend to be extremely welcoming. And most people don't question it. That being said, if this was like even 2 or 3 years ago, that's a whole different answer. Is like, you know, I wouldn't have the confidence to tell anyone my sexuality. I would just hide and pretend and be like, oh, boyfriend instead of girlfriend, you know? So, yeah. So I want to be very honest and say I recognize the privilege that I have with my pronouns and how I'm presenting. But also, I think that the gaming space today is a whole different beast than it was even 2 years ago. So I think it's a lot more supporting now than ever. And that being said, I think the gaming esports space can be more positive than the rest of the world sometimes. And on the other side of that, it can be a lot more toxic, depending on what crowd you're in. Especially if you're in like the like Riley, like the TFT crowd and the League of Legends crowd can be gnarly. So I understand why you
Yeah.
stay away from
Yeah.
I
Twitch
think it's
live.
just
Thank
Riot
God.
Games in general
No,
as
the
well.
CS:GO space is
Yeah.
actually worse. The CS:GO space is
Really.
yes.
I believe it.
Oh, did you also? Well, Lyndsay, the reason you have the whole I Am Esports campaign and Venom, which you should shout out later, is because of Thorin making a comment about Riot starting women's only series for League because it's worked in Valorant.
So you want me to go off?
Well, actually, Tor and I are planning on finishing this up with plug your projects and talk about what you do, real briefly. So,
Cool. Okay, I'll wait.
So everyone already knows why I'm here. I'll save my crap for the end. Harley.
I mean, I'm still pretty new at Merrywood Esports, but really, I guess just make sure to follow Merrywood Esports on the socials. I'm going to be trying to get as much information out as possible, really reaching out to the community as well. I'm gonna do my best to draw from all that I've learned from Cora and from all of the other people here, and being the experience of being in such a welcoming community, to really make sure that the esports community at Merrywood University and in collegiate esports in general is a welcoming place. So if you want to follow at Merrywood Esports, I think just about on every platform. And then I guess follow me on Twitter at Jacob L. Adler. I might have to look into changing that actually now that I think about that. But yeah, just thank you so much for having me on as well, and for putting on such a wonderful show for Pride Month and for the Trevor Project, which is a wonderful cause. Holy cow.
We've gone up 150 from just this section alone, by the way. Yay. Riley?
Yeah, I don't really have any special projects or anything I'm working on right now. It's just kind of me being active on social media and doing my thing and still doing these casts. Like, I'm still in grad school for another year. I have no plans on giving up casting anytime soon, so watch TFT events if you want to see my face. I'm like I'm decently active on Twitter. I've started getting into TikTok and being more active on there, and kind of the same thing over there of like being a trans face over there, and especially over there with there's we all know like what's happening all over the US with like the anti-trans legislation and stuff. So a lot of my presence over on TikTok especially is being like, this is what trans joy looks like. and I think that's super important to see as well. So both of those socials are at Jirachi TFT, Y on the end instead of a Y of Jirachi. So that's kind of all I'm doing right now.
And Ken, Lyndsay, now it's time.
Okay. So thank you so much for having me on this panel. I think it's always humbling to be able to have these real talks on a safe platform and a safe channel with various people that are, just in the LGBTQIA plus space. So I plugging things. Yeah, the I Am Esports campaign came from Thorin, who is one of the quote what I call zero generation, where there's zero generation, first generation, and now we're into like second generation esports. And so this person's been in the space for forever, so they still have a lot of those toxic issues that we hear about and see that, think Xbox 360, Halo 3 lobbies kind of toxicity. And so pretty much this person started getting violently angry at people online about the Riot all women's initiatives.
Actually, it was CS. It was CS. He was because the Riot one inspired the CS one.
Yeah.
So he was upset with the CS
yeah.
one doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because he's a CS:GO person.
Yeah. So it was CS:GO. So pretty much said all these things, and I don't even like to like explain the tweet because I don't want to like give him power, but said like, I built this industry, it's on my shoulders, biologically, like women can't compete at the same level and like all this stuff. And then he was like, how dare you come at me like I am esports, and it was so toxic. And so what I did with my good old buddies over at Esports Gear is we slapped I Am Esports, all caps, very clean, on t-shirts, hoodies, unisex women's cut, all that fun stuff. And we push that, and all funds are going to an all women's Valorant tournament called Venom. And the registration is now live. So if you know any teams that want to compete, it's going to be the first ever full all in-person women's Valorant LAN, and we're super excited about it. It's going to be July 15th through the 17th in Columbus, Ohio at the flagship Game Arena location on North High Street. If you want to get involved or know anybody that might want to get involved, let me know. Yeah, there we go. There's the hoodie. Yep. Cora is my right hand and my head TO, and I'm going to be hosting and stuff. And we're just really excited about it. We have a ton of other initiatives, but I'm not going to lie, that's my biggest push. So please tell all your friends and family. The experience is open for anyone that's femme identifying, mask identifying, but the competitors are femme identifying and non-binary. So just really excited for it. It's going to be a weekend of love and openness, and we're going to have panels and side activate. It's going to be dope. So definitely check it out. And I could talk about it forever, but please compete in it if you want to. Registration just opened up 2 days ago. So
real quick, super side note before I know, Cora, you have to do your thing. I did not know that was you. I actually did not know that was you who organized the whole thing. It just, like, as you said that, I was like, oh my gosh. Because I remember when that happened, I was like, this is so cool.
I got blocked by
I thought
Thorin.
It was the coolest thing. Thorin blocked me. I was like, yeah, I mean, women are esports.
Yeah,
and then
I've
I was
been
like,
blocked by Thorin for years, so it was funny when that came back around and it was trending.
There's a
Oh
certain
my
person in the high school space who has blocked and unblocked me 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna shoot for a 7th. When his company goes under, I'm gonna speedrun it. So
yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I had someone come up and recognize me, and they're like, oh, "You are the I Am Esports Lyndsay," and I was like,
yeah,
I don't deserve that.
So cool. Thank you. That's really cool. I was just fangirling for a second. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, you're too sweet. Well, you should come to the event, and I'll stop talking. This has been an honor hanging out with all of you guys. You can also find me Lyndsay_live on like everything. So.
Okay.